Welcome everyone to the Fantasy Cruncher YouTube video for Monday, January 20th. This is for the DK early slate. So this covers 9 games. So it's MLK Day. So we've got games in different slates all across the map. So this is going to cover the DK early slate. I'm going to do a Twitch stream at 3 p.m. which will cover the DK late slate and then the FanDuel main slate. So they're all kind of separate. They all got a little bit different strategy to them. So this is going to cover the DK main slate. I'll be sure to include in the YouTube video how to get to the Twitch stream and all of our other content over at fantasycruncher.com in case you're playing a slightly different slate. We're going to have plenty of content up for all the slates. I just want to tell you that this is going to be the DK early kind of main slate, I guess, since it's got 9 games. So I just wanted to tell you what we're going to cover. That's the first thing. Second, congratulations to Beefer for winning the free week of Fantasy Cruncher Pro. It is there in your account. It is good through next Monday. So take advantage of it. And if you want to win or enter a drawing, I guess, for a chance to win free Fantasy Cruncher Pro for a week, all you got to do is listen to the show. I'll talk about it, how you can enter the drawing at some point during the show. We're not going to do it up front. We're not going to do it in the back. We're going to do it somewhere in the middle. So if you watch, you'll be able to enter. Simple enough. All right, let's do it. We've got 9 games. I got injury source here on the left side of my secondary screen, so we don't have them all uploaded yet. I'm recording this video like right after Sunday Night Football, so because I know that this slate's going to pop up super early in the day tomorrow, so I want to get this content out to you as fast as I can. So just apologize. Stick with me as the injuries take a little bit longer than normal. Washington, the only injury we have is Pashizniks. Jordan McCray not listed on the injury report, and neither is Bradley Beal. And for Detroit, it is just the same for Blake Griffin out for the season, Kennard, Reggie Jackson, etc. I think the first thing I want to note in this game is Andre Drummond, the 9,600 against the Washington Wizards. That's a fantastic price for a player that can just go out there and destroy all the centers on the roster. So you can just see last time against Atlanta, just complete domination in 27 minutes, was averaging basically 2 fantasy points per minute. Wizards should be just about as good a matchup. First time around, you can just see he just absolutely destroyed. And then second time, they didn't need him really past 2 quarters. So if this game stays anything remotely competitive, it should be a great spot for Andre Drummond. Derrick Rose's price for me is too expensive for that minutes cap that he's on. As you can see, just 26, 29. He played 37 one time, but he's really on that minutes cap. They're trying to be responsible with it. Every once in a while, he'll go play those 36s, but your guess is as good as mine when it's going to happen. 7,200, just a smidge too expensive for that. Bertans is back for the Wizards, but I kind of need to see him get a full run of 30-plus minutes before I use him. Hasn't really shot the ball that great last 2 games as well on those increased minutes, so I'll let Bertans go win a slate first. Good, interesting spot for Sekou, coming off one of his worst games against the Hawks. This is a much better spot against a Wizards team that doesn't really have a traditional big, kind of more of those lanky 4s, which he can kind of do a little better with. He's had good success with those too. Brandon Ingram, Jason Tatum this year. So I don't mind Sekou as well at 5,300 if you're looking for a differentiator in tournaments. Other than that, though, I mean, Zv's price is up. Troy Brown's price is up. Ish Smith's price is up. Both these teams kind of relatively healthy for the first time in a while. So kind of really tough for me to get super excited about anyone. If we get word that Thomas Bryant's minutes restriction's gone, I wouldn't mind that. 4K is too cheap for him, but without word that his minutes restriction's gone, going to be kind of tough to play Thomas Bryant, especially with Mahinmi still playing starters minutes at center. This isn't the situation he left, so that's another guy I would be a little worrisome about. IT is going to break a slate eventually, but honestly, he's just been so bad. Just let him be on someone else's roster that he breaks a slate, because he's just going to be a black hole so often. All right, that's the first game. I'm going to pull up some totals on the secondary screen here for you. I'm sure they're out, because this is a pretty big slate. The total in that game was... Where is it? There it is. 233. Wizards are favored by 1. Next game, Toronto at Atlanta. Toronto favored by 1 million. Okay, it's fine. It's not actually 1 million. It's 8, 231 total here. Trae Young, I think the biggest thing we should talk about is Jeff Teague played a bunch of minutes in this game. Didn't really kill Trae Young, but I think the days of 37 to 40 minutes are kind of gone. Unless it's a competitive game they can win, and I really don't see this being one of those. So until the Trae Young price kind of drops to about 9K, or I see that he's going to play 35, 36 minutes, and they're going to give Jeff Teague minutes next to Trae Young, I'm probably going to be out in the Trae Young business, especially in this spot against Toronto. Great player, superstar, can definitely win you the slate. Just for me, it's going to be really tough until we get a bigger sample size on what they want to do with Jeff Teague to really trust it. That first game, Jeff Teague played 25 minutes, so he played a lot of minutes besides Trae Young. So is that 25 and 27? So maybe not. That's only like 4 minutes next to each other. Game blew out. Actually, you know what? Let's just take a look at it. We can look at this. It's pretty easy to pull up. So let's just take a quick look at this. Game flows. The Atlanta Hawks against Detroit. So we can figure this out pretty quickly, how many minutes they play next to each other. So they've played, that's Cam Reddish. So they played, let's see, that's 6 and 3. So they played 3 minutes there. And then basically none in the second half. So again, we really don't have a lot of sample size of them playing together. They did play some early and they banded it pretty quickly. So we'll have to keep an eye on that moving forward. But I that's definitely something that worries me about for the Trae Young ceiling in the minutes department. Until we see them regularly playing next to each other, it definitely could be limiting the Trae Young minutes ceiling. Kyle Lowry, 8K with Pascal back. I can't get there. This is the spot where Pascal should probably get off the minutes restriction. It's been a week now. You kind of think he can get off the minutes restriction, play his 34, 36 minutes. Against Atlanta, that's a fantastic spot. John Collins really shouldn't be able to stop him. So I think this is a nice spot for Pascal. Should note, though, that like everyone's finally healthy for Toronto. I'm pretty sure Fred VanVleet came back last game when I was traveling. He did. So we really haven't seen full-strength Toronto a lot this year. But 7,500 for Pascal is that's baking a lot of that risk into the price. So I'm perfectly happy going to Pascal here. You know, Fred VanVleet, Serge Ibaka's too expensive for me. Norman Powell, way too expensive. They did a good job pricing up all the role players for Toronto here to points where even if they kind of hit their ceilings, it's tough for them to win the slate. So, for example, you know, even like OG Anunoby before Fred VanVleet came back, right? In these games against the Wizards, the big blowout, he put up 35. Like, 35 really isn't going to win you a slate at 55. It's a nice play. It's a good play, but it's not like the essential break the slate guy. Tough for me to see with everyone healthy how OG gets to that enough. Same with Norman Powell, same type of ideas. So that's probably a pass. For Atlanta, I think there's a couple more guys that you could play. John Collins, 7,300. Tough matchup against Pascal. I don't love it, but you could go there. Cam Reddish is still playing big minutes. You know, he's streaky shooter, but he actually has been shooting the ball more. Now, if he's going to shoot the ball 10 to 13 times a game, he's got a ceiling. And I think that's the thing we've seen more recently than we saw early in the season, is that he's willing to shoot it more. So if they're going to keep playing him 30-plus minutes, and there's no reason why they shouldn't, they're not going anywhere, I think Cam Reddish is a fantastic GPP option on really just about every slate moving forward. Little more streakier than Dillon Brooks. If you've been watching a lot of my content, you knew I was really high on Dillon Brooks when he was in the 4Ks the first few months of the season. He's going to be a little more volatile than Dillon Brooks because Dillon Brooks' volume is a little more secure, but similar type of idea about a guy who can just get hot. DeAndre Hunter, similar type of deal. I just don't like him as much, but there's definitely ceiling there for those guys, especially if the game gets a little out of hand. They could definitely finish off some games. Okay, that's it for this game. This game's one of the more kind of, I would game stack that game if you think it's going to be super competitive, but other than that, I would just pass. Philly, here, Al Horford is out, and Embiid is also out, I believe. Or is Horford questionable? Now let me double check. Horford is, I think he's out, but let me double check. Beat still has the broken hand. That I know. So, my player news source is not loading. Well, that's not very helpful. I am like 90% sure he's questionable, but I wish I could confirm it. Let's just type it into twitter.com really quickly. Al Horford questionable with that left handspring. I mean, if he can go, it's a fantastic spot against Brooklyn. Al Horford's price is up, but the spot's fantastic. He hasn't really flashed a ceiling in this spot yet, but as you could even see last time out against Brooklyn, he put up 40 fantasy points, and he even didn't shoot the ball well. He shot the ball quite terribly. So if he shoots the ball better, he can beat this price. But the handspring might limit the minutes. Not wild about it. If Horford can't go and Embiid can't go, Kyle O'Quinn, 3,500. He's been back to playing some minutes here when those guys miss. Early in the season, they were playing Pele over him. So I think that, that's definitely something that we could see again. But Kyle O'Quinn, 3,500. If Horford's out, you got to play him, whether he starts or not. Don't mind Pele as well if we find out he's active. He's been playing some minutes lately, but he's been kind of more of a 15-minute guy. So thinking Horford's out, Kyle O'Quinn's back to being the guy that you want in those situations. That would also be a boost for Ben Simmons. Again, I'm not the world's biggest Ben Simmons fan, but he draws another fantastic spot for GPP ceiling purposes where he can triple-double against that awful Brooklyn front court. So that's an interesting option. Kyrie is only 7,800. I think that's too cheap for Kyrie, just given the fact that Embiid's not on the floor. They're still a very good defensive team, but I think I want to take Kyrie here. He's going to get 22-plus shots. Maybe not 22-plus. 18-plus shots. He's got to make them, but I think with the defense and a little worse space, especially if Al Horford's out. If Al Horford's out, I would definitely like Kyrie a bit more. Everyone else is kind of fine. Like, I don't love Spencer Dinwiddie with Kyrie back. Josh Richardson, I just don't see how he breaks the slate at that price. Jarrett Allen's interesting if Kyle O'Quinn is the starting center. I don't mind 5,900 for him. But other than that, I kind of think this game's kind of a pass. I wouldn't chase the Korkmaz shot lights out game from 2 games ago. I think what he did against the Knicks is more reasonable, where he just puts up like 16 points and just gets you no peripherals at all. So I wouldn't go crazy for Korkmaz. I think the play in this game really is Kyle O'Quinn if Al Horford's ruled out. Brooklyn, I think Kyrie's got a ceiling. He's a lot cheaper than your other stars. But the matchup's the hardest, but it's Kyrie Irving, and he kind of is matchup proof, so I don't mind that one as well. Total in that game is not out yet because we're still waiting on Al Horford, but Philly's a slight favorite in this game by 1 or 2 points, which kind of makes me think that Al Horford's going to sit here. But we'll find out for sure tomorrow. All right, so now we're into the 5 o'clock windows. So those were your 3 p.m., your 3:30, and your 2 p.m., your 2:30, and your 3 o'clock games. This whole other set starts at 5. So, there's merit to be said on DraftKings of just registering your teams with all 5 p.m. or later guys and just hope that no one in the early slate breaks it. It's a little tougher for that because those are 2 of the highest total games, but Washington has 1 million guys and Detroit does too. So even though the total's pretty high, it could definitely be a situation where that hasn't happened. Ooh, well, that's a glitch. I was just looking at the on my other screen. Everything has it at 233, and one of the books has it listed at 233 or 223, which is wrong. So if you happen to get to this early and you have a BetMGM app in Vegas, you might want to check that out. If it's still 223, that's pretty nice. All right, first one of these 5 p.m. games, Orlando at Charlotte. Injury news-wise, here we've got, for Orlando, DJ Augustine's out till mid-February. Isaac is out basically the whole season. And then for Charlotte, who's been the walking wounded all season, they actually are finally healthy, which is nice to see. Nikola Vucevic is the first guy that stands out here, 8,400. I can't remember the last time I've played even considered Vooch on a slate. It's been a while. Now, granted, I guess it's because I was in Vegas for a while, and then when I was home, they had brutal matchups like Utah and Miami. But he's been playing pretty well without Isaac. The usage rate's been in the high 20s, low 30s, taking about 15 to 20 shots a game. This is a good matchup against Cody Zeller and Bismack. He can kind of do what he wants in this spot. So I definitely don't mind him at 8,400. I think he's pretty sneaky here. I'm just trying to see if have they played this year? So a couple blowouts, 3 blowouts really. So hasn't had the minute ceiling, but if we look at a point per minute basis, 1.5, 1.5, 1.3, that's not bad. And those games all had Isaac. So if this game can somehow stay competitive, I definitely can see Nikola Vucevic putting up a ceiling in this spot. For Charlotte, it's tough. Everyone's finally healthy. So, it's either Devontae Graham or Terry Rozier. They still really aren't going off together a ton. So I don't mind either one of those plays. I think if I had to pick one, I would actually probably take Terry Rozier. Despite having that really horrific start of the year, he's finally just started to eat up all the minutes he can handle. So I don't mind him here. He's been shooting the ball better lately. Actually, that's probably my problem. It's probably too good. I'm probably chasing the shooting. You know what? I changed my mind. I'd rather play Devontae Graham. I think he's more all-purpose. Terry Rozier has been shooting a little out of his mind from 3, and I don't really want to chase him up the board like that. So give me Graham over Rozier, but both, if you're game stacking, are viable options here. Markelle Fultz with no DJ Augustine's been finally getting up closer to 30 minutes, but again, just not making any threes, which really just makes it hard for you to win the slate as a DraftKings point guard. You get those bonus for those 3-point shots. Really tough for me to see a scenario where he kind of just goes out there and wins you a slate, unless he goes and shoots 80% from the field again. So possible. I mean, he could triple-double like he did against the Lakers. I guess that's in his arsenal. He's super talented, but it's kind of like DeMar DeRozan for me. I just really don't play them on DraftKings a whole lot because it's just not the scoring system that favors them. Don't mind Fournier 5,600. This is way too cheap for Evan Fournier. Guy is going to shoot the ball 16 plus times in anything that resembles a competitive game. Charlotte's not good at all against the shooting guard, or any wings in general. I know shooting guard, small forward can kind of just be really nitpicky. Wings. Charlotte gives a lot of points to wings. I'm going to really try to focus on that in my content by going point guard, wings, bigs. I think that's more realistic in the modern NBA, so I'm going to try to do that more in my content. So call me out if I start saying shooting guards and small forwards, because those are basically interchangeable positions. So wings, Evan Fournier does quite well. Should do quite well in this spot. Minutes, no concern. Usage, no concern. The price is super nice. For example, I love Terrence Ross, but there's no way that Evan Fournier should be basically the same price as Terrence Ross. That's just a little bit ridiculous. So I would really just play Fournier every time here. PJ Washington, one of my favorite players. I can't say I've roshed him a ton this year, but every time I'm watching a Charlotte game, I'm always impressed. He had a great spot, played a great game in a good spot against Portland. Aaron Gordon, not the world's best spot. I would kind of like him more against a Carmelo type, but he's okay. He's done well against this type of player before. Did well against Dallas and Boston and Toronto, who all kind of the similar type 4s. So I don't hate it, but you definitely are embracing some variance there. But the ceiling there is massive for sure. Miles Bridges, tough for me to fall in love with him just given who else is all there. He can get benched. We just saw it against Portland. So he's okay. I'm just not wild about it. Zeller and Biyombo, we don't really need to play them on this big of a slate. So I really think the best plays in this game, Fournier, and then one of Graham or Rozier. You could stack this game. It's actually pretty easy to do. You would stack Fournier and Vooch and Graham and PJ Washington. Don't mind that. The total in this game is probably 220. Oh, wow, it's only 207. So they're expecting this to be a little low scoring than I would personally have it. But nonetheless, 207. That does feel a smidge low. But the Magic do play really slow. But their starters do get a lot of the usage these days. The Magic bench is depleted, so they've been playing big minutes. So still don't mind stacking this game if you're looking to do something a little contrarian. Next game, the Knicks at Cleveland. I don't think we have any injury concerns on Cleveland for once. Well, we still have John Henson out, but that's not really news. And for the Knicks, we have Wayne Ellington is sick. RJ Barrett still with that ankle injury. I think he's been ruled out already. Yeah, 1 week. So he's expected to be out. And so that really just frees up Marcus Morris to just shoot. Last game against Philly. Played 36 minutes. Took 17 shots. I would basically expect him to be doing somewhere between 33 and 38 minutes and taking between 15 and 20 shots a game right now without RJ Barrett. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think without RJ, I think Randall and Marcus Morris can kind of play the games they really want to play. I think sometimes the Knicks have really tried to run the offense through Barrett, and it kind of just makes it stagnant a little bit. So I think that matters for sure. Elf Payton at 5,300 here starting, I think is way too cheap. Again, no RJ Barrett. I think really the Knicks in general are really cheap on this slate. Like Randall 7,700 against Kevin Love, Marcus Morris 5,600, Elf Payton only 53, even Mitchell Robinson at 51 coming off the bench. I think the Knicks are a little underpriced here. Now they definitely can start doing some crazy lineup things. You know, if we look at the Knicks, they definitely are playing a big rotation right now. They are playing 10 guys. So that's a little concerning. Obviously, anytime you're playing 10 guys, rotations can get, like, some guy gets hot, and you definitely are embracing some variance there. I just kind of think the guy that's going to get cut first is Reggie Bullock. And we kind of have seen it in some other games where, like, he's the one that loses minutes. So I don't hate playing Marcus Morris, Randall, Payton, and Robinson pretty convincingly here, but it's a risk. And I do want to point it out that, like, Mike Miller could go and he's been pretty good with his rotations. Like, I think I'm being a little unfair to Mike Miller. He's actually been pretty stable, but it's the Knicks, right? And I know it's a fantastic matchup, and I'm sure I'm not the only person that's gonna be like, hey, you should be looking here. But I think I like to kind of present both sides of it. And did I play tennis? Yes, I did. But I am streaming right now, so I will log out of Discord real quick. So that doesn't pop up again. I did play tennis, and I did play his 1% owned guy. He gave me a 1%er, and the guy went off. It was a women's Australian Open tennis match, and it went 6-1, 6-0. It was fantastic. I was quite happy with him. He's just logging back on the Discord to see it. But that is unrelated to our NBA video. Oh, but sometimes it is fun when you get the 1%er that just plays really well. It gets you in a good mood. And I'm in a good mood, I got to admit, despite how bad those football games are. So that's the other thing I want to mention about for the Knicks. Cleveland, it's a good Kevin Love spot. It's an okay Tristan Thompson spot. Darius Garland, Cedi Osman, 4,500. I'm not like desperately trying to put them in my lineups, but I kind of just note that they're good values. That's kind of one of those I'll plug into my projections, and if I get a lot of Cedi Osman, I'm really okay with it, and if I get none, I'm fine with that too. His minutes can get a little up and down, but, you know, the price is fair. He did just get an extension, so he's definitely part of their plans, so I don't want to get crazy there. And Nance Jr. been playing back to getting 25 minutes with no John Henson. I just thought it's tough to get a ceiling when Kevin Love plays, but worth mentioning that as well. Also, too, worth noting quietly, the rotation for Cleveland has gotten pretty narrow. And so against the Knicks here, like Cleveland has got a team that's been playing a ton of guys this season, and quietly look like they've turned into a 7.5-man rotation. So I just want to point that out, that like you can, like, if you want some big minute guys, like Cleveland's really sneaky against the Knicks. What's the total in that game? 222, and it's Cleveland's a favorite. This is a really, really, really sneaky spot if you want to get some guys with some minute ceilings here, because they got them. So that's the other thing I did want to point out is this, you know, with all these injuries to Kevin Porter, and like they're names that you aren't so like expecting there to be an injury from. Oh, is Exum out too? Ooh, Exum played Saturday, but gotta check out with that too. Again, like if he's still on limited minutes, sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. So I did want to point that out as well. Okay. Oh, he was even in this 9-man rotation too, or 7.5-man rotation, whatever you want to call it. 8-man rotation, really, if you want to combine those two into a bench guy. So Cleveland, sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. Sacramento and Miami. So here, there's an injury that's not on the injury report, but I happen to be watching the game when it happens. So Bielitsa's day to day with an ankle, and I think he's gonna miss, if I remember correctly. Oh, he's probable. Well, that's good because I saw. Let's see. He's benefited from absence of Bagley and Holmes. Holmes is still out, but Bagley might miss. So Bagley rolled his ankle in the final 2 minutes of Saturday's game. I had him on a really good team, so I was paying attention. He was getting garbage time and rolled his ankle. Obviously it looks like they did an injury report today, and he's not on it. So that's a good sign. But just just think about that. As you're kind of rostering Marvin Bagley, be ready to swap because he's a fantastic option at 5,400 on DraftKings. But there's definitely risk here. So this is not a play that like I'd go out, I'd make it 2:00 and go out and not look at my team again, because there definitely is some risk there. But Bagley, good matchup against Bam. And I say good matchup because he can stretch out the floor, and Bam doesn't really defend out very well. So he should be able to get the shots he wants. Like, Bielitsa's 6,800. There's no reason why Bagley should be 1,400 or less than whatever Bielitsa is, right? Like, he should be more expensive than Bielitsa. But I'm going to just digress. Whatever. Like, I get it. Bielitsa is the hot player, so he's going to have the price bump. But he should never be this expensive. Buddy Hield 64 is interesting. I'm not, like, desperate to get him. Same with Bam, Fox, or Butler. They're all fine options if you get them. Don't think it's required. This is a back-to-back for Miami. So, you got to be a little worrisome there. Sacramento's been in Miami. Now, is being in Miami for a day or two helpful? You could debate that on your own. But also, too, they might be shorthanded because Kent Bazemore is not expected to play. That's a good point. How many players does Sacramento even have? Good question. So, Fox, Bielitsa, Hield, Barnes, Bagley, with a bench of Bogdan and Joseph. So this is basically what we just saw with Cleveland in terms of rotation. It's what Sacramento's going to run in Miami. So again, don't be afraid to give those guys extra minutes as you're kind of thinking through in your head which one of these guys you want to play. This is going to be this is a 223 total. So, be careful here. Like, don't just fade them because you're like, oh, this isn't like the sexiest spot in the world. Like, Buddy Hield at 64 could definitely go break a slate playing huge minutes. Bogdan Bogdanovic at 5,100 off the bench is a really good option. He just hasn't played well. And if he plays well, he's going to close. And if he closes, he's going to get 32 minutes. And if he gets 32 minutes at 5,100, he's a guy that could easily go break a slate. So I did just want to point that out. And if Bagley was to miss, then Dwayne Dedmon at 3,100 would become immediately a top option. But sure doesn't look like he's going to miss, so I don't want to overreact to it. But I just did want to point that out. Okay, Oklahoma City at Houston. I can't imagine why this is going to be a game. Oh, that's right. Chris Paul's return to Houston. That's right. 229. Houston's 6.5-point favorites. I start with Chris Paul because we've seen Chris Paul take over some games lately for the playoff positioned Oklahoma City Thunder. He played amazing on Saturday night against Portland. It was really vintage Chris Paul. Like, he just shot the ball fantastically. He was making good decisions. He's 6,800 in what's going to be one of the faster paced games they're going to play. The total isn't going to be the world's highest at 229. Like, he's played in higher total games, but this is still really high. And I would be surprised if he's playing under 30 minutes in just about any scenario in this game. So, Chris Paul, like, I get it. It's narratives. It's not real. Okay, so when I say narratives aren't real, like, you can't project them, but Chris Paul's not going to, like, just not play minutes in this spot. And that's helpful for a guy like Chris Paul. He's old. Like, if I could project Chris Paul for instead of 32 minutes, if I can project Chris Paul at 35 minutes, it's definitely going to make a difference. 3 minutes at 1 point, what is he at? 1.14 for the season. Like, that's an extra 4 fantasy points on the projection, and that could be a difference between getting a guy and not. So, Chris Paul 6,800 is the first guy that stands out. Oh, injuries. I forgot to do injuries. Gallinari's questionable. Terrence Ferguson's dealing with an illness. Nader's still dealing with that ankle. And Houston, I think, is relatively healthy, other than Austin Rivers, who, whatever. You weren't playing Austin Rivers anyways. So. Okay. So, Houston-wise, Westbrook, Harden, they're both fine options. James Harden's in his annual I can't make a shot stretch. It happens. This is during the stretch is when you can start randomly getting him at like 5% owned. And anytime you can get James Harden low owned, it's worth noting. I'm not suggesting it's going to be 5% owned on this slate. It just does happen 2 to 3 times a year where James Harden is a stud that no one plays. And that's always a great place to be because he's got one of the highest usage rates in the league and is at 1.7 fantasy points per minute. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, probably too expensive for me. Capella against Steven Adams just isn't a spot that I'm in super love with. Hasn't really crushed it this year at all, so not like desperately trying to get there either. Don't mind Eric Gordon off the bench. Don't mind Nerlens Noel. He's been playing a bunch more minutes lately and been playing pretty well, but with Adams back, I just don't see he gets enough. McLemore is probably the guy that benefits the most from Austin Rivers being out, can probably pick up a few extra minutes, but what's Ben McLemore's ceiling at 4,300? Like, Eric Gordon's 4,700. And we know he can actually put up 33 fantasy points. Ben McLemore with all those guys back? Probably not. PJ Tucker, your resident stand in the corner and do nothing guy. He's available for you if you want Max Payne. Don't chase the Baisley fantastic game on Saturday. That game just got out of hand, and he was playing well, so he just got the closing minutes. Really in this game, it's Chris Paul, it's James Harden, it's Russell Westbrook. Dennis Schroeder, 6,300. Like, I love Dennis Schroeder as much as the next guy, but how am I going to tell you to play Dennis Schroeder for 500 less than Chris Paul? Like, in his return in Houston. Like, I get it. There's going to be a massive ownership gap there, but the projections between the players, you can even see it here, like 30 fantasy points to 37. Like, that's about what I would expect the difference to be. So, just Chris Paul is just such a better play. Hard to imagine playing Schroeder over Paul. Anything other than just trying to be contrarian, which doesn't even make sense on this slate because all these games lock at the end. It's not like you're going to know you're blocked or something and need to pivot. So, all right, New Orleans Pelicans at Memphis. Zion Williamson is doubtful. He will return on Wednesday against San Antonio. They decided to make it at home, his opener. I think that makes a lot of sense. So, obviously, it's Martin Luther King Day in Memphis. So, Memphis hosts this game every year. Memphis is favored by 2. I would expect the total to be somewhere in the 220 range as well here. I mean, let's see. What's Jrue Holiday's status? I can't say I know for sure. Oh my, there's a lot of injuries here. So, let me pull up these one by one here. Okay. So, JJ Redick is probable for the Grizzlies. Jrue Holiday is questionable. Jahlil Okafor is questionable. So, a lot of unknowns in this game. So, this is definitely something we're going to have to keep an eye on. If Jrue's out, obviously, I think that makes Brandon Ingram one of the strongest plays on the slate. Without Jrue Holiday, he's just been a usage monster. I mean, that Utah game was one of the more fantastic games I've watched in a long time. Even against that Clippers great defense, he still was a pretty good player. I think I would project him somewhere in the 50 to 53 fantasy point range against Memphis here if Holiday's out. If Holiday's in, first question would be a minutes limit. Can't imagine there would be one because it's an elbow, not a leg injury. So I would like to play him at 72 in that scenario, but probably will be tough to know. John Morant, that minutes restriction, just still really a pass for me. Like, even projecting him for 32 minutes, I think is really aggressive. Most of the time he's playing like 30, 31 minutes. So I wouldn't get super carried away with John Morant. Although I will say the minutes restriction is kind of getting a little more relaxed. But I remember the last time they did that, he got hurt right away. So I still think they'll try to keep him around 31 minutes, and that's just tough to pay 8,200 for anyone in that scenario. If Holiday misses, Lonzo Ball will continue to just be basically a triple-double threat every time out. 7K, not too much for Lonzo Ball if Giroux is out. So what you could do is you can plug in Giroux in your teams, and if he gets ruled out, just swap to Lonzo. They're basically the same price. Or if you could play Lonzo and keep 200 on every team, and you could swap to Giroux. I think that's totally viable. Favors against Memphis is a good spot. Now, he's not going to make every field goal attempt for the rest of the season, but he is like a 2010 upside guy. And hasn't faced Memphis this year, and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Jonas aren't really threatening media on the front court. Jay Crowder, D'Anthony Melton, like those guys, one of these guys will go off. Good luck telling me which one it's going to be. Same idea with Josh Hart and JJ Redick if he goes, or Etwan Moore. Like, again, one of them could do well. Good luck telling me which one it's going to be. Dylan Brooks, 5,800 is way too expensive. I am the president of the Dylan Brooks train. But you can't pay him for 5,800. He just simply can't break the slate enough to make that worth your time. Like, you'd have to just go shoot lights out and not get in foul trouble. And that's not very likely to happen. So, don't play Dylan Brooks. But other than that, I do think there's some sneaky plays in this game. Like, I like Ingram, Holiday or Lonzo, Favors. Jaren Jackson Jr. at 6,200 is very intriguing if he can play the minutes and not get in foul trouble. So, he definitely some viable options in this game. I think this is the with all those early high total games, again, I think those games will be over-owned because they're the first games on the slate. They're not on some other main slates. So if people are playing that slate, they're going to try to get those early guys. These plays are just as good and actually is easier because you'll have all the information for the 5 p.m. games before you make your lineups. So if you have time in the afternoon and you're not going to be doing anything, I really think you could fade those first couple games and give yourself a chance to build some optimal teams here in the afternoon for all those 5 p.m. games. And this game's got a 220. It's going to have like a 228 total as well. And you got that Oklahoma City game too, so it's not the only one. Last game on this slate, Chicago against Milwaukee. The first thing I will note is I have faded Kobe White twice in this spot. It has gone poorly twice. 3 times. I played him the first time. I haven't played him in any of the other matchups. And he just does what I expect to have happen every time against the Bucks. I recommend the guy that can get hot from 3 and the guy that can shoot and loves to shoot. And for some reason, Kobe White, since the first time where I got burned, I just can't seemingly get back to him. It's a fantastic spot for Kobe White. Kobe White plays minutes when he makes shots. Like, he does. If he makes shots, he plays. And he's going to get plenty of open looks here. The Bucks love to leave him open. They love to collapse, give up those 3-pointers, and contest. If he makes them, he's going to kill this price and be a winning player. If he doesn't, he's going to be terrible. I think he's a fantastic pivot off of Chris Dunn, who's playing good basketball again, but he can lose his minutes. And I think Kobe White would be the guy to absolutely steal the Chris Dunn minutes, so I would definitely create a 1 max rule. But Kobe White's probably my favorite of the 2. Oh, I didn't do injuries. I should do injuries. Well, there's none for Milwaukee other than Robin Lopez. That was easy. And Chicago, it's still Gafford and Wendell Carter Jr. So we're looking at, lots of Lauri Markkanen. Another player who I've tried to play in this matchup for the same reason numerous times. And this time, this just hasn't worked out. He just hasn't put the game together yet. Don't think it's necessarily going to happen here today, but I should note with the injuries, like, he could just get 34 minutes here. Zach LaVine's been on one of his just absolute heaters lately. I love the player, but he just doesn't shoot enough threes. Although he's been shooting a ton lately. Maybe. It's hard for me to just believe that Zach LaVine's an $8,800 player, honestly, but maybe he is. Like, if he's just going to shoot it 24 plus times, what's he done against the Bucks this year? He's taking a lot of threes and a lot of shots, but it's really not, he's not going to get those layups, right? So if he's not going to get the layups, it's just really hard for him to hit his ceiling. I think I would just rather play Kobe White, 4,400, basically half the price of Zach LaVine, but If you told me you wanted to play a Zach LaVine Giannis team, game stays close, I guess I would understand that. Giannis is, if the game's close and he plays 30-plus minutes, he's going to be one of the highest scoring players on the slate. It's just, your guess is as good as mine if they're going to need him play him those minutes. So, like, 25 minutes against Brooklyn, he puts up 50 fantasy points. Like, that's 2 fantasy points per minute. Like, Giannis is ridiculous. He's so good. He's averaging 1.95. I really hope he gets to 2. Like, just average 2 minutes. 2 fantasy points per minute on this season. So, if you want that free Fantasy Cruncher Pro subscription for NBA for a week, leave your Fantasy Cruncher username in the chat and tell me how many fantasy points does Giannis end up with. That's all you got to do. You don't even have to be right. Just leave your Fantasy Cruncher username, leave that comment, subscribe and like too. Please subscribe and like. And then leave in the comment section your Fantasy Cruncher username with the number of fantasy points you think Giannis scores today. Bledsoe just hasn't been playing minutes. They're playing a lot of rotation games in Milwaukee. It really is just kind of Giannis or bust for me right now. So, I think that really does do it for me in this game. George Hill, I guess I could see playing big minutes, but I've said that a lot this season that he just doesn't. So, I would just rather play 4,400 for Kobe White and just hope he makes some shots. And so that's it. That's the last game on the slate. Man, I can't believe that's the last game on the slate. So let me just kind of review the stars and the top value options on this slate, and then we'll get out of here. Again, please subscribe and like if you haven't already. So the top studs on the slate, Giannis, Harden, Westbrook, and Brandon Ingram. And then maybe even Zach LaVine gets into that conversation. There's some really good 8K players too. So like if you don't want to play any of the studs, like you could build a really good team around like Andre Drummond, Brandon Ingram, and Vooch. Like you could definitely do that with a huge ceiling. In terms of the top value options, I don't agree with that value option. Bagley, we talked about Bagley, but we talked about that rolled ankle. Kyrie Irving, Dunn, and White we talked about. And then you start getting to kind of some of the ugly, Dante. Ooh, Jordan McRae's only 4,900? Oh, I missed that. That is way too cheap for Jordan McRae. This is why we review the value plays. Because 4,900 for Jordan McRae is way too cheap. Even if Bradley Beal's there. He's going to play 28 minutes and take a ton of shots. So love me some McRae at 4,900 for sure. Especially that he's already off the injury report. I don't think he'll be on a minutes limit at all. So, McRae, Marcus Morris. So, those are the type of guys that we already talked about. But, wow, Jordan McRae, definitely a value play. I'm glad we reviewed that because that would have been an oversight. With that, guys, that's it for the DraftKings early slate. Again, I'll be on Twitch, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'll leave that info in the bio so you can come check me out for the DK late slate and the FanDuel main slate. Please subscribe and like so we can do these videos every single day. And with that, guys, enjoy your MLK Day, enjoy your basketball, and we'll see you tomorrow.